This is the fourth part of our D.I.S.C. descriptors. So we're going to take a look at the C trait and characteristics. C standing for conscientiousness. And this is a trait that each of us have some of, but people who are high in this area have traits and characteristics that are a little bit different. So let's take a look at some of the descriptors so that you can recognize this style of a person. Looking on your handout, we're talking about descriptors. One of the descriptors for a high C person is that they are very accurate. They are people in our organization who want to be sure that things are done right. They're accurate. A lot of times you find high C people gravitate to jobs and positions where that's necessary in their position, like accounting or engineering or areas where, or finance, where there's a lot of accuracy necessary. Quality control. So C's tend to gravitate to those type of positions and jobs, and they're very good at it. They've got a natural knack for it. And putting people in positions, and we can talk about it a little later, that rely on or require the type of basic style that a person has is a good match and a good fit. And we do some of that when we do the areas of selection and recruiting, of matching people with where they belong. The second one is analytical. High C's are analytical. They like to study things. They want to be sure they've got all the data and the information. You're able to tell a high C pretty easily by asking some questions or listening to the questions that they ask. They always want more information. No matter how much information you give them, they want more. They want to know all the details about everything. So would you suggest that they are quick decision makers? No. They're not quick decision makers. They require a lot of information to make a decision. Contrast that with our high D style, who make quick decisions. So you can see within organizations right away we have a style conflict. So with these kind of people working together, you can begin to see where conflict is going to arise. One person says, let's go. The other person says, well, wait a minute. You know, we need more information. So again, learning how to deal with and work with the different styles to formulate a team is one of the things that we're talking about here. The more we can recognize and understand the differences, the better we can utilize those differences in our organization. The next one is high C's are also systematic. Again, they like to work with systems, a lot like S's. S's and C's have a lot of traits in common. The thing that they don't have in common is the high C's are much more task-oriented, where the S's are much more people-oriented. If you take a look at the next one, high C's are very low risk takers. They require a lot of information, a lot of data to make a decision. Therefore, they generally like to have low risk. They don't make decisions on purchasing and so forth and so on without a lot of information, a lot of data. They'll ask questions about who else is doing this. What background do you have? What information can I look up to see and verify what you're telling me is true, and so forth and so on. So they're looking for a lot of data and a lot of information because they're very, very low risk takers. The key is they don't want to make a mistake. We'll talk about that down at the bottom. Who are some people, some famous people that have this high C trait and characteristic? One of them is a fellow that ran for president quite a few years ago. Some of you may not remember him, but he's still around today in the environmental issues, and that's Al Gore. Al Gore is a high C person. If you weren't around in the time where he was running for president and they had debates, on TV, televised debates. Well, one of the things about Al being a high C was not a very personable person. So not very people oriented. So they tried to give him a makeover, and so that he would become much more personable and outgoing in the debate process. And it was a disaster. He couldn't be who he's not. And it killed him in the debates. I mean, he came across looking phony. It was just not good. So that was not his style, and he should have stuck with his facts and figures, which is what he's good at. Another one that we can talk about that we would recognize is an actor, Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner is a high C person. He doesn't necessarily play high C roles, but when he gets involved in production and producing films and so forth. He's noted as a director to be very meticulous about the way he does things like that. Clint Eastwood is also another one that falls into that category, especially in the movie industry. He plays a high D characteristic in his westerns, but that's not who he is. In his production and in his role of filmmaking, he's very much meticulous and a high C person. So those are some examples that you can kind of see traits and characteristics of high Cs. If we look down there, what energizes a high C, one of the things that they're very interested in and they need is a lot of facts and information. They are hungry for knowing all the data and all the information they can give them. So if you're going to give them a project to do, you need to work with them so that they have a lot of data and a lot of information, or where they can get that data so that they can complete their project. If you don't do that, you create frustration and you create a lot of conflict with them because they're looking for that type of information. They are very organized. We talked about that a little bit. They like individual assignments. High Cs are not particularly strong team players. They'll play on a team, but that's not their forte. A lot of times researchers and so forth that you can imagine in either the medical field or various are high C people, and they are loners. They're R&D people, and that's what they like. They like the data, they like the facts, they like working in situations where those things are foremost in their particular job requirement. If we look down there and say, well, what are some improvement points? What are some of the things that Cs have to watch out for? One is they're too low risk takers. Sometimes they're so low risk takers they don't move to the next point. They're too slow in moving from point A to point B. And within organizations, sometimes it costs a lot of money because they delay projects. They're afraid to move forward because it's not perfect yet. And so sometimes that's a real disadvantage. A lot of times they don't express their feelings or their opinions. A lot of times they don't tell you what they're thinking. So again, kind of like the S's, you have to kind of pull information out of the high Cs. The other thing about a high C is they can be too critical. Because they gather information, if you correct or discipline a high C about an issue, you better have the facts and the data to back it up. Because they generally don't make a lot of casual mistakes. They have done their research before they come to a conclusion. So if you're questioning them, you better have the data to back it up. How do you communicate with a high C? Well, obviously one of the things you need to do is give them a lot of information, a lot of data. So knowing that that's the type of person that you're working with, give them that kind of information. Keep to the task. They're not very social. They're not highly social. That doesn't mean they don't like people. They just like them in small doses. So when dealing with them, you want to stick to business. Unless they get off on a social conversation, then you stay to your business discussion. Another one they have there is, I thought it was interesting, down at the bottom it says, do not touch. High Cs are real sensitive about their space. It's said that we've got kind of a periphery around us that's our personal space. Well, Cs have that well defined. So if you encroach on their space, you create a lot of conflict with them. And it's fun at social gatherings, since I'm not a high C. I will find people that are kind of high Cs, and I'll walk over to talk to them, and I'll move in a little closer than is comfortable, and you watch them back up. And it's just funny for me to watch them. And it happens every time. They just start backing up. They're unconscious about it, but they're really sensitive. So that's kind of fun. But that's okay, let's look down at the bottom. Let's talk about stress relief. When C's get uptight and so forth, and they've had and they can do that because of all the pressure they put on themselves to be perfect. A lot of times high C's have the challenge of being so accurate and gathering so much information so that they're exactly right. They want everything to be perfect, which creates a lot of stress and also can create conflict with others. But what they need is downtime. High Cs, to de-stress themselves, need time alone. They're the kind of style that like, to take a long walk by themselves. They walk in the woods or walk on the beach, or go to the mountains and sit by the fire in a log cabin up on a mountain by themselves and read a book. That de-stresses them. That helps them to wind down and get away from the facts and the figures and the details that their job may require. Emotion. The emotion of a high C, remember we talked about the D is anger, the optimism is the I, and the stoic style, if you will, or emotion of the S. The C, their emotion is fear. What do I mean by fear? They're not fearful, but the fear is that they might make a mistake. That's the worst thing that can happen to a high C person, is that they make an error or make a bad decision. They don't want to do it. They're afraid that that might happen to them. Therefore, they're not quick to make decisions. In many cases, they take a while to get there. So in our team, as you can imagine, when we need high Cs, where do we need them? We need high Cs in the details. They're the ones that help us to put the details together. They're the ones that are ensuring that our quality control is there. We need those people. And you can tell that about the D, the I, the S, and the C. If we were to put a perfect team together, a perfect four-man team together, what would that look like? Well, obviously, it would not be four Ds. Obviously, it would not be four Is. You got a party there. Obviously, it would not be four S's. They would get along very well, but probably would not get in a whole lot. High C's, four C's together, they're going to analyze the thing to death. So what do you need? You need one from each style. A D, an I, an S, and a C on a team would be a great team. Now, how difficult would it be to manage that team? Difficult. Why? Because they're all different. We need them, but because they're differences, it's very difficult to manage. But if you can get them to agree on the goal, on what the purpose is, and all moving in the same direction and what the end results are, that's a great team to work with. Okay, what about percentage of our population? Well, again, we've got 20s and the other three, so obviously to make 100 you're going to have 20 something. In this case, high C's are about 24% of our population. So those are high C's. We need them. They're valuable to our team, and then when we look at our recognition factors and descriptors, hopefully these things will help you identify the D, the I, the S, and the C so that you know who you're working with, and you can begin to adapt the way you communicate with them and work with them to encompass how they are seeing things and where they're coming from. If you can get on the same page there by adapting, then that's when you can have a winning team and a winning organization.